Who is the most hated person in your workplace and why? Story 1. Far and away the most hated person in my carpentry shop is the deaf guy. I've only been working there a year and everyone thinks he's the most vindictive, hateful, selfish, paranoid jerk to walk the earth. He's easily the hardest worker there. I can tell you with confidence that he has generated the most money for the company of anyone there. He absolutely owns his portion of the shop. He has it down like clockwork and doesn't waste a second. All that being said, he throws an absolute rabid fit whenever anything out of routine happens, and he won't look anyone in the eye and he calls everyone lazy jerks. After a month of working there, I started to learn ASL, American Sign Language. I learned a few things at home and I would say anything that I could to him. Happy Monday, how are you, etc. I learned how to ask about words, how to spell things, and how to sign numbers. Pretty soon he's teaching me a word a day. Then it speeds up to 3 to 5 words a day. Fast forward a year and we talk constantly. What I learned is that he gets mad because he's passed up for promotions because he's deaf. People don't tell him when overtime is available, which he wants. He sees people coming in late and still taking breaks, and he never breaks those rules. He gets mad that no one ever tells him about new machines being bought or new jobs coming in or the gossip. I unknowingly became his liaison. He's able to get all the jokes we tell at lunch because I can translate. He can joke back through me. Other people are learning sign language as time goes on too. What I don't get is why no one ever gave him the benefit of the doubt. It would suck to be deaf and never know what was going on. Some people have worked with him for 15 plus years and no one ever learned any ASL. He thanked me recently for being a good friend. He said things are a lot better now. Wow. All he needed was some common ground and is now relatable with a lot. It was a good call for learning ASL. Story 2. Let's call him Danny. Danny doesn't wash his hands. Danny, for some reason, feels the need to not use a spoon to put in more coffee in the communal coffee maker. No, he's got to use his hands because people need to quit being afraid of germs. Danny takes a dump, comes out to join everyone in the company lunch, and sticks his dirty hands down the bucket of KFC to get a piece at the very bottom. Danny came in hungover one day and just slept 8 hours at his desk. Danny doesn't flush. Danny loses every form of paperwork given to him. Danny is a jerk. Danny is apparently too good of an engineer to fire. Danny's cat jumped in his car one day and came to work. Danny's cat, Clark, has been here a year now and has become feral. Clark did take care of the rat problem, though. Clark rolls with a random pack of coyotes now. Screw Danny. Screw Clark. Clark is too scary for animal control to take away. So I just got back from an HR meeting and Danny was a no-show today. Something about being sick, but I'm fairly sure the gout finally got him. HR didn't mention my post, only reminded us about proper personal hygiene at the office since it continues to be an issue. Since I didn't post any company info, I'm somewhat in the clear. They do want me to note that no one is unfireable. Also, in the future, any complaints about anything going on in the workplace should be directly discussed with HR to be handled in the appropriate manner. Fight Club is apparently not an option. Danny will be given the same rundown once he comes back. He did text me a picture of his middle finger. Also, HR has talked to him twice and a third infraction will lead to appropriate actions being taken. Once again, Fight Club is not one of those options. Apparently 90% of my coworkers are Redditors, which explains why we don't get anything done. My boss couldn't contain his laughter when he read through the comments. Boss told Danny if he wasn't such a savage, we wouldn't be in this situation. Clark was last seen about a week and a half ago by the night security who says he saw a pack of coyotes out front, followed by Clark. This was confirmed by security footage at the front gate. I work near the outskirts of town. All I'm allowed to say about where I work. Can't post security footage since their company logo is on both sides of our gate. I've asked Danny for a picture of Clark before he decided to be a feral jerk and sent me a picture of his. He's a gray Maine Coon, with a portion of his tail hair missing that won't grow. Clark has a brother, who I'll call Lewis, who lives with me as of a few months ago. Nothing like his brother. 10 out of 10, great to pat and give belly rubs to. To be honest, I kind of vibe with Clark. I didn't know cats and coyotes could even be friends. Story 3. A woman who, on her first day, went around asking a series of oddly specific questions like, are you white or mixed? How old are you? Are you religious or not? We stupidly answered them, thinking she was just being friendly. She put on a sweet, naive demeanor. After a couple of months sitting on her ass and doing nothing but lying about her knowledge base, skills, and her progress in several projects, her supervisor tries to fire her. Of course, she's union, so that's not as easy as it sounds. We find out she's filed grievances against all of us. The white male is racist, the half-Korean lesbian supervisor is ageist. I'm a bigot because I'm non-denominational Christian and she's Baptist. The other African-American female around her same age was after her job. This woman literally pulled every card she had. She managed to keep her job too, but thankfully, corporate transferred her and got her out of our hair. She now has a reputation thanks to this move. She thinks she's buddy-buddy with her union president, but even he can't stand it when she calls him.
Hey there. If you haven't heard already, a few friends and I recently launched Rufus Rugs, your go-to destination for premium custom hand-tufted rugs. Looking to add a touch of your favorite anime like Naruto to your space? We've got you covered. Or perhaps you're a die-hard Pokemon guy and want bus toys showcased for everyone to admire. No matter your style, we can bring your vision to life. Click the first link in the description to explore more.
Story 4. My boss's wife has given me a position of authority over my department, despite having no experience or expertise in the area. But the worst part is, she's an older lady, and by all accounts seems to be suffering from dementia and Alzheimer's. Every single email you send her or email chain she's included on, she will respond without having any understanding of what was written to her. So then you have to spend the time explaining the whole content of the chain or email to her. We have to attend meetings with her where she will spend a lot of time rambling about things that have nothing to do with our work. We have to remind her or re-explain things we talked about at the last meeting that are relevant because she doesn't remember or understand. And the whole thing happens all over again in the next interaction with her like it's Groundhog Day for her. Movie idea. 50 First Dates, corporate version. Story 5. He's no longer working with us, but he still is legendary to this day. Since he's most likely on Reddit, I'll refer to him as Magoo. Magoo and I both started at the same time in a science-based company, but in different departments. He looked really good on paper, well qualified and interviewed fairly well, from what I was told. I sat next to him and we began chatting. It became pretty apparent that something was off on him. He would giggle to himself during the conversation and immediately began one-upping me in the conversation, saying how he had something better or knew more about what we were talking about. Not a big deal. I work with scientists and engineers, being one myself, and odd personalities are the norm. Within a day or two, I knew that I was not going to enjoy my time with Magoo. Our office is a tradition of getting bagels and cream cheese every Friday as a sort of reward for a long week. I get in at 8:30. Magoo is already munching happily on a loaded bagel and giggling to himself. Not a big deal either. I get my bagel, start working, Redditing, and head to the bathroom an hour late. I can see as I'm walking that Magoo is eating another bagel. Not cool, but I've gotten to myself from time to time if there are plenty left. 15 minutes later, I see Magoo eating another bagel and trying to sneak off with it. I confront him and tell him you can't eat 3 bagels before some people have had one. He brushes it off and tries to pretend like he didn't know he had done it. This guy's in his 30s, by the way. Magoo's interests were wide and varied. Think being a part of esoteric clubs, making his own gaming computers and brags about it. The worst part of being around him is that he takes over every conversation he's in. And he's in every conversation. He will literally walk up to a group of people, no matter what they're talking about, laughing like he heard something funny, and then interject with how he knows more about it or is an expert at it. It got to the point that we would avoid him at all costs, or just leaving when he came around. Didn't matter to Magoo. He would follow you and talk about his knowledge anyway. Magoo is also a closed-eye talker. You know who I'm talking about. The kind of person who will smugly assume he knows more about what you're saying and will close his eyes and turn his head away in an exasperated measure of, I can't believe I have to explain this, manner. He began to get on everyone's nerves, but began getting bolder with his interjections. He interrupted the CEO of our company during an important meeting to correct him on a detail that didn't matter. The balls on this guy. He also began changing login details since he knew a good bit about computers, for shared machines for sequencing and changing protocols without getting approval. He ordered over $10,000 in materials for an experiment that wasn't authorized, to answer something he had been wondering about, not even related to what we were doing. The last straw is when he started insulting people if they disagreed with him, including his boss. At this point, most people wouldn't even respond to him when he spoke to them, and most people just left when he came around, even in mid-sentence. How he lasted 3 months is beyond me, but the day he was fired, we were told to stay out of the offices in case he did anything drastic. After he was gone, he asked his boss for a reference. I still like to check up on Magoo every now and then. He's still unemployed and probably has no idea why. How was ordering $10,000 worth of equipment that was unrelated to anything they were doing not the last straw? Story 6. Ass constantly eats through the day, but to do this, he must take several trips to the canteen to acquire food. But on the way to the canteen, it starts with at least a 20-minute cigarette break, complains heavily if anyone asks him to do anything as he's always too busy. We have flexi time at work, so he gets in early, and on the odd time I have turned up early, the office lights are always off, apparently preferring to work in the dark. Becomes deeply offended at any change in the office, and the temperature must be kept cold as he can't work if it's too warm. Can't stand the coffee addicts in the office as they need caffeine but drink several bottles of Coca-Cola every day. I have been in the office now for nearly 2 years, still yet to work out what he actually does. He smells. He's sweaty, and when he sneezes, he wipes his nose with his hand and cleans it off on the desk. I hate S, and so do the rest of us. I have no problem with working in the dark, but as a person who works in the IT department, I feel it is better to do work with eyes open and the PC on, and not having the office door locked. I don't mind wearing my coat all year round in the office, gloves in winter, but I do feel a compromise could be met. I'm not asking for a sauna. Story 7. Worked for an attorney who was almost never in the office, and I'm not talking like she was in court or meeting clients outside the office. She just wouldn't show up. She missed calls and appointments all the time, but I got written up for missing a few days because my babies got sick and then I got sick. She was a bitch for other reasons too, but she was hypocritical on top of it. There was a time she didn't come in for 2 weeks and she argued with me about it, and I asked her to show me on the calendar when she came in. She couldn't. She did not remain a partner for very long. Sounds like pain pills or alcohol to me. Story 8. We have this goober of a guy who works probably 1 full day a week. I actually get surprised if I don't have an email in my inbox in the morning of him saying he won't be in. Worst of all, though, he sits nearest to the bathroom and makes comments like, "Wow, you were in there a long time. Must have been a number 2," when people come out. Story 9. Coworker who talks way too damn much. I can make conversation with my coworkers, but we all have a sense of when it's appropriate. She's the kind of person who bombards me with chatter as soon as I walk in before I've even taken my jacket off. She tries to make conversation out of everything, to the point where it gets really annoying because it happens so frequently. I was really swamped with stuff the other day, and she stopped me just to point out that a customer's last name was 1 letter different from her own maiden name. Isn't it amazing? No, Carol, it's not. Of course her name is Carol. Carols are always like this. If you don't want to be a Carol, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Story 10. My most hated person is a troll who survives off cigarettes, Diet Pepsi, and the soul she drains, mine included. Some of her greatest hits. Telling me I'm not getting any younger, therefore my babies would be disabled. Her word, not mine. Telling a delightful tale of how she once snuck pork into a Muslim's diet. Going on about her husband's pension and how she doesn't have to work, she just works for the fun of it. Yet she bums, smokes, and bus fare off people half her age. She lives to get anyone into trouble, yet she's incompetent herself, and when she's called on it, she says, "To err is human." Every week she threatens to quit, but no one would have her. She dislikes me just as much as I dislike her, so one time she was working an alternate shift and she was talking about how she always takes the high road. She goes, "I wish the best for everyone, even Rebecca." I am Rebecca. My coworker started laughing at her. I was bombarded with texts. I found it funny. She's racist too. I'm an indigenous woman and we're from the same region but reside in the same city. She's French-Canadian. She told everyone I pretend to be native because I'm really black. She calls the black guys all the same name because they all look alike. Her favorite saying is, "I don't do wops, I don't do pork chops, and I don't do Frenchmen." Like she's a Sports Illustrated model. She looks like a gargoyle. Well, from the sound of it, she isn't doing anything or anyone. Story 11. My office is the classic argue about anything guy. I mentioned once that I had recently rewatched the movie Equilibrium. This guy buttered in and announced that the movie actually sucks. Spent about 10 minutes saying the effects were lame, the costumes were lame, futuristic movies are so overdone. Obviously not knowing this movie came out 15 years ago, then ends it by saying, "I haven't actually seen it," and just saying, "This election season has been a nightmare." Guy went out of his way to find out who everyone was voting for, and if someone wouldn't tell him, he'd make an educated guess. Then argue and question their voting choice that he himself decided. He vehemently debated the result of the election and ended up exposing that he in fact had no idea what the Electoral College does, and also had never heard the term gerrymandering. Not something I would expect everyone to be knowledgeable on, but probably don't start a massive office fight if you don't know the basics of the argument. Also mentioned that LGBT rights aren't that big of a deal to an LGBT office member. The best moment had to be when one coworker decided to mess with him and posted a warning about the dangers of dihydrogen monoxide. The coworker told this guy that illegalizing this dangerous chemical was important. Dihydrogen monoxide can suffocate people. It's found in acid rain, etc. Guy totally agreed and said Trump would handle it. Oh, I remembered something else. A coworker and I were talking about Star Wars and how technically you wouldn't hear the ships or explosions or lasers, etc. because it's outer space. But who cares because it's awesome. Guy listens in and challenges us, saying of course you would hear them. Tried to explain that there's no sound in space, but he didn't want to hear it. He was like, "Well, what if there was an explosion?" Me. "It would be silent." Him. "But what if the sun exploded?" Me. "It would be silent. In space, there is nothing for the sound to vibrate off of." Him. I'm pretty sure you could hear the sun exploding." Story 12. Not working there anymore, but I had one coworker, call him Roy, who was a POS. We worked in IT support and Roy was considered the expert for a certain system our team managed. He was supposed to train me, but he only taught me the very basic stuff. He never told me about the plethora of problems that can occur with a system. When alerts did happen, which I had no idea what they were or how to respond, he would chastise me and throw me under the bus. There was another incident where the boss didn't trust him to come in for an overtime shift, so I was asked to come in at a certain time to cover. I called Roy first thing in the morning and asked if he would come in. He said he would, so I went at my normal time. Roy doesn't show and I'm forced to work 10 hours that day to cover his lazy ass. Surprisingly, the incident didn't get him fired, but he did proudly announce that he found a new job a month later. The new job rescinded their offer and he went into survival mode. He deliberately continued to train me poorly to make himself unreplaceable, but the company refused to let him stay and that was the end of that. So what you're telling me is that Roy is in fact not our boy? Story 13. We had a manager who was one of those authoritarian, annoying, retentive types that just had a negative outlook on things in general. She was shrill and pretty, and I found out later she told another coworker, a manager, that I would never amount to much of anything after I interviewed for a promotion with her and that other manager. After she left and that coworker got his own team, guess who was the first person he bought on board and was eventually his first promotion? I not only outlasted her but earned 3 Employee of the Quarter awards. Other managers hated her too, and at one point one of them stuck a fish in the ceiling above her office and just left it there as it started to stink up the space. They would just snicker as they walked by her office while she was lighting candles or air fresheners. Story 14. Let me tell those of you who listen this far about Supervisor Chef Bob. We all hated Bob. Bob wasn't a team player, you see. When you were swamped, everyone would skip breaks except for Bob. We would all help whoever was falling behind, except Bob. Bob did his own thing and left you to the wolves. Bob always pointed out that you did wrong or what you'd lazily done. Eventually, Bob started helping me a little when I would fall behind. I thanked him once for grilling a steak for one of my orders, and I made the mistake of telling him that steaks are my weak spot. I had trouble overcooking them. For weeks after that, he arranged it so I cooked every damn steak. Time passes and I become, not to brag, one of the competent employees. I noticed one night that Bob was jumping in to help me whenever I fell behind. He would even ask what I wanted him to cover. Once I was working with him and I noticed Brenda was falling behind. Brenda is always falling behind. I was clear for a minute and told Bob that I was going to help Brenda for a minute. Bob said no, Brenda has to learn how to do her job. She won't learn if we always do it for her. And I saw Bob in a whole new light. He wasn't lazy, he just wanted us all to know our jobs. Once he knew anyone could handle anything, then he was quick to help out. He admitted to me once, very bad at remembering who had taken breaks. He had no problem covering for a break, we just had to ask him instead of waiting forever for him to tell us to go. Now, Bob is gone. I was genuinely sad to see him go. Standards have fallen and Brenda's still incapable of doing her job. Story 15. I work in a small chiropractic clinic. 3 chiropractors, 4 receptionists, 2 per shift. One of the receptionists literally does nothing but check patients in. We're supposed to work on billing and other tasks to do with insurance. She always leaves her Facebook logged in into the communal computer, so I like a bunch of dank meme Facebook pages for her. That's such a harmless and weird prank, it's amazing. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll enjoy. Have you ever seen someone get fired on the spot? Story 3 was crazy. See you there.